The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held representatives from over 3,000 species. Light from distant stars poured through crystal walls that had stood for 50,000 years. This was the heart of civilization. This was where power lived and breathed. Ambassador Yuna stood on the smallest platform in the entire chamber. Her platform floated at the very edge, far from the center where the elder species sat. She wore a simple black uniform with Earth's symbol on her chest. Behind her stood 2 guards and a translator. Though she needed no help with languages, humans learned fast. That was one thing the galaxy would soon understand. "The species from the 3rd planet of the Sol system requests membership," announced the speaker. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. He was a Velthari, a creature of pure energy contained in a shell of living metal. The Velthari had ruled the council for 10,000 years. Yuna stepped forward. Every eye in the chamber turned to look at her. She felt their judgment. She felt their dismissal. To them, she was nothing. Humanity was nothing. A young species that had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They were babies crawling into a room full of giants. "Thank you for this opportunity," Yuna said. Her voice was calm and steady. She had practiced this speech 1,000 times. "Earth wishes to join the Galactic Council as a peaceful member. We seek trade, knowledge, and friendship with all species." Laughter rippled through the chamber. It came from the Croshan delegation, a group of insect-like creatures with sharp claws and sharper tongues. Their leader leaned forward on his platform. "Friendship," he repeated, making the word sound foolish. "Young one, do you know how long our species has existed? 200,000 years. Your kind was still living in caves when we built our first starship. What could you possibly offer us?" Yuna did not flinch. She had expected this. Humans were used to being underestimated. It was almost comfortable now. "We offer perspective," she said. "Fresh eyes see things that old eyes miss. We offer determination. Humans do not give up. And we offer loyalty. Once Earth makes a friend, that friendship lasts forever. Fresh eyes. Once Earth makes a friend. Once Earth makes a friend. We offer determination. We offer loyalty. We offer more laughter, more dismissal. But Yuna noticed that not everyone was laughing. Some of the older species watched her with strange expressions. The Velthari speaker said nothing, but his energy flickered in a way that suggested deep thought. Counselor Hyun watched the proceedings from his small office on the outer ring of the station. He was a junior member of the human diplomatic team, responsible for research and records. His job was to learn everything about the council before humanity made any mistakes. He had spent 3 months reading through public archives, trade agreements, historical records, scientific papers. Most of it was boring, but Hyun found it fascinating. The galaxy was so old, so complex. Humanity had so much to learn. Today, however, something bothered him. During his research, he had found gaps, empty spaces where information should exist. Certain time periods had almost no records at all. Certain topics were completely absent from every database he could access. One gap stood out more than others. Approximately 10,000 years ago, something had happened. Something big. But every reference to this event led to locked files and restricted access warnings. Hyun was curious by nature. That curiosity had made him a good researcher. It had also gotten him into trouble many times. He knew he should ignore the gaps and focus on his assigned work, but the mystery called to him like a song he could not forget. Back in the Great Hall, the vote was taking place. Each species cast their decision through a beam of light. Green meant yes. Red meant no. Blue meant undecided. The lights filled the chamber like a storm of color. Yuna watched them swirl and dance. She tried to count the greens, but there were too many lights moving too fast. Finally, the speaker raised his hand. The lights froze in place. A moment of silence fell over the hall. "The vote is complete," the speaker announced. "Earth is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council." Provisional status will last for 100 years. During this time, humanity will have limited rights and access. After 100 years, a second vote will determine full membership. Yuna bowed her head. Earth accepts these terms with gratitude. It was not the full victory she had hoped for, but it was enough. Humanity was inside now. They had a seat at the table, even if that seat was small and far from the center. Given time, things would change. Humans were patient when they needed to be. As Yuna left the chamber, she passed by a group of elder delegates. They were speaking in low voices, their words hidden by translation blockers. But Yuna caught one phrase before she moved out of range. "Do they know?" one of them asked. "Do the humans know what they are?" Another voice answered, cold and afraid. "No, and they must never find out. The archives must stay sealed." Yuna kept walking. She did not show any reaction on her face, but inside, her mind was racing. What were they hiding? What secret was so terrible that even speaking of it required such fear? She made a mental note to tell Hyun about this. If anyone could find the truth, it was him. That night, Hyun sat alone in his office. The lights were dim. His screens glowed with data that scrolled too fast for most eyes to read. But Hyun was not most people. He had trained himself to see patterns in chaos. The gaps in the records were not random. They formed a shape, a deliberate erasure of specific events and specific names. Someone had worked very hard to hide something, and they had done it so well that most people would never notice. But Hyun noticed. He always noticed. He typed a query into his terminal, a simple question. What happened 10,000 years ago? The screen flickered. A warning appeared in red letters. Access denied. Restricted archive. Authorization level 9 required. Hyun leaned back in his chair. Authorization level 9 was the highest classification in the entire council. Only the speaker and the eldest counselors had that level of access. What could be so secret that it required such protection? What was the galaxy hiding from itself? Hyun did not know the answer. Not yet. But he would find it. No matter how long it took, no matter what dangers waited in the shadows, he would uncover the truth, because that was what humans did. They asked questions. They sought answers. They never stopped until they found what they were looking for. And sometimes, the answers they found changed everything. 3 weeks passed since humanity joined the council. Hyun had not stopped searching. Every night, he dug deeper into the archives. Every night, he found more walls blocking his path. But walls could be climbed. Walls could be broken. Hyun just needed to find the right tool. His opportunity came on a quiet evening when most of the station slept. A systems update was running, and for a brief window, certain security protocols went offline. It was a small gap, lasting only 15 minutes. But 15 minutes was enough. Hyun's fingers flew across his keyboard. He had prepared for this moment. Custom programs ran through the temporary opening, pulling fragments of data from restricted servers. Most of what he gathered was garbage. Corrupted files. Empty folders. But hidden among the trash, he found gold. A single document, heavily damaged but still readable. The title made his heart stop. Classification: Extinction level threat. Subject: The Silence Makers. Status: Archived. Do not access. Hyun opened the file. The text was broken, full of gaps where data had been deliberately destroyed. But enough remained to paint a terrifying picture. 10,000 years ago, a great war shook the galaxy. Dozens of species fought for control of resource-rich systems. The war lasted for centuries. Billions died. Entire planets were burned to ash. Then the Silence Makers appeared. No one knew where they came from. They emerged from a small system on the edge of known space. Their technology was primitive compared to the warring powers. Their numbers were small. By all logic, they should have been crushed in moments. But they were not crushed. They were not even slowed. The Silence Makers did not fight like other species. They did not seek territory or resources. They sought only one thing: an end to the war. And they achieved that end through methods so brutal so complete, that the memory of them haunted the galaxy for millennia. When the Silence Makers attacked a fleet, no ships survived. When they targeted a planet, no signals ever came from that world again. They did not conquer. They did not negotiate. They simply made things go quiet. The war ended within a decade. Not because one side won, but because everyone stopped fighting. They were too afraid. The Silence Makers had shown them what true power looked like. And that power was absolute. After the war, the Silence Makers vanished. They returned to their small system and went dark. No communications, no trade, no contact of any kind. The galaxy breathed a sigh of relief and tried to forget. But forgetting was not enough for the Council. They wanted to erase. Over the following centuries, they systematically removed all records of the Silence Makers. Names were deleted. Coordinates were locked. Anyone who spoke of them was silenced through money, power, or darker means. Eventually, the Silence Makers became nothing more than a ghost story, a myth that parents told children to make them behave, be good, or the Silence Makers will come. Hyun stared at the screen. His hands were shaking. He did not want to believe what he was reading, but the evidence was clear. The coordinates of the Silence Makers' home system were listed at the bottom of the document. Most of the numbers were corrupted, but the final digits remained. Sol 3, Earth. Humanity was the Silence Makers. Humanity was the terror that ended the Great War. Humanity was the reason the galaxy had known peace for 10,000 years. And no one remembered, not even humans themselves. Hyun closed the file. He needed to think. He needed to breathe. The weight of what he had discovered pressed down on him like a mountain. How was this possible? Human history showed no evidence of spacefaring civilization 10,000 years ago. Humans were still in their Bronze Age at that time. Had they forgotten? Had something happened to erase their own memories? Or was the truth even stranger than that? Hyun thought about human nature. The capacity for violence that lived inside every person. The darkness that emerged in times of war. History was full of examples. Humans could be kind and loving, but they could also be cold and merciless when threatened. Maybe the Silence Makers were not a different civilization. Maybe they were just humans pushed to their limit. Humans who had witnessed the galaxy burning and decided to stop it by any means necessary. The thought chilled Hyun to his core. He needed to tell someone. Ambassador Yuna needed to know. But how could he explain this? How could he tell her that humanity was the galaxy's worst nightmare? Before he could decide, his door opened. Yuna stood in the entrance, her face pale and worried. "I received your message," she said. "You found something." Hyun nodded. He could not speak. The words stuck in his throat like stones. Yuna walked to his desk and looked at the screen. She read in silence. Her expression did not change, but Hyun saw her hands grip the edge of the desk so hard that her knuckles turned white. When she finished, she let out a long breath. "This explains many things," she said quietly. "The way they look at us. The fear in their eyes. I thought they were just dismissing us as primitive. But that was not it at all. They were afraid. They have been afraid from the moment we arrived." "What do we do?" Hyun asked. "If this gets out, if the other species learn that we are the Silence Makers, they might attack us. A preemptive strike before we remember who we are." Yuna shook her head. "Or they might run. Fear works both ways, Hyun. The question is not what they will do. The question is what we want them to do." She turned to face him directly. Her eyes were hard and determined. "We need to learn more. This document is incomplete. There must be more information somewhere. Who were we really? What did we do? And most importantly, why did we forget?" Hyun nodded. "There is a senior archivist named Taeho. He works in the deep archives. The ones that store physical records from before the digital age. If anyone knows where to find more information, it would be him." Yuna considered this. "Can we trust him?" "He is human," Hyun said. "And right now, that might be the only thing that matters." They made plans to contact Taeho the next day. But as Yuna left Hyun's office, she paused at the door. "Hyun," she said, "whatever we were 10,000 years ago, we are not that anymore. We have to believe that. We have to hold on to our humanity, no matter what we discover." Hyun wanted to agree. He wanted to believe that the past did not define the future. But deep inside, a small voice whispered doubts. If humans had been the silence makers once, could they become them again? Was that darkness still inside them, waiting for the right trigger to emerge? He did not know, and that uncertainty frightened him more than any enemy ever could. The night grew darker. The station hummed with quiet energy. Somewhere in the archives, ancient secrets waited to be found. And in the hearts of every human on that station, something old began to stir. Taeho was an old man with white hair and tired eyes. He had worked in the deep archives for 40 years, sorting through physical records that most people had forgotten existed. Dust was his constant companion. Silence was his only friend. When Hyun and Yuna found him, he was sitting in a chamber filled with stone tablets and metal scrolls. Light came from floating orbs that drifted lazily through the air. The smell of ancient things hung heavy in every breath. "You should not be here," Taeho said without looking up. His voice was rough like gravel. "This section is restricted." Yuna stepped forward. "We need your help. We found something in the digital archives, something about the silence makers." Taeho's hands stopped moving. For a long moment, he sat perfectly still. Then, slowly, he raised his head. His eyes held a weight that seemed too heavy for any person to carry. "That name should not be spoken," he said. "Not here. Not anywhere. But we need to know the truth," Hyun said. "The records say they came from Earth. They say we are the silence makers. Is that true?" Taeho stood from his chair. He moved slowly, his old bones creaking with every step. He walked to a wall covered in strange symbols and pressed his hand against it. The wall shimmered and opened, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. "Come," he said. "If you want the truth, I will show you. But understand this, once you know, you cannot unknow. Some truths are better left buried." They followed him into the hidden chamber. Inside, they found records unlike anything in the public archives. Stone tablets, carved with human hands. Metal plates etched with symbols that looked both alien and familiar. And in the center of the room, a device that pulsed with soft blue light. "This is the memory core," Taeho explained. "It holds the true history of our species. I discovered it 30 years ago, hidden beneath layers of lies and misdirection. The Council does not know it exists. If they did, they would destroy it." He activated the device. Light filled the room, forming images in the air. Hyun and Yuna watched as history unfolded before their eyes. 10,000 years ago, humanity reached the stars for the first time. They were curious and eager, full of hope for the future. They made contact with other species and joined the galactic community with open hearts. But the galaxy was not what they expected. War raged across every sector. Species killed each other over resources, territory, and ancient grudges. Billions died every year. Entire civilizations were wiped out without mercy. Humanity tried to stay neutral. They tried to avoid the violence, but the war came to them anyway. A coalition of aggressive species saw Earth as an easy target. They attacked without warning, killing millions in the first strike. Something broke inside humanity that day. The hope died. The kindness faded. In its place rose something cold and terrible. Human scientists worked without rest. They developed weapons that made nuclear bombs look like toys. They created strategies that no other species had ever imagined. And they trained soldiers who felt nothing but rage. The counterattack began 6 months after the first strike. Human fleets emerged from the Sol system like a swarm of angry wasps. They did not seek negotiations. They did not accept surrenders. They simply destroyed. One by one, the species that had attacked Earth went silent. Their worlds burned. Their fleets vanished. Their names were erased from history by human hands. But humanity did not stop there. They saw the endless war as a disease, and they decided to cure it. For 3 years, human forces moved through the galaxy. They targeted military installations, weapon factories, and war councils. They gave each species a simple choice: stop fighting, or be silenced forever. Most species chose to stop. Those who refused became examples. Their fate was so terrible that no other species dared to continue the war. Peace came to the galaxy. Not because anyone wanted it, but because everyone feared what would happen if they did not accept it. When the fighting ended, humanity looked at what they had become. The rage faded. The cold fury melted away. And in its place came shame. Horrible, crushing shame. The leaders of Earth made a decision. They would erase their own history. They would destroy their advanced technology. They would return to their planet and start over, forgetting everything they had done. A device was created to wipe the memories of every human alive. The process took years, but eventually, it was complete. Humanity forgot the stars. They forgot the war. They forgot being the silence makers. They returned to being simple creatures on a small blue world, unaware of the terror they had once been. The memory core flickered and went dark. Silence filled the chamber. Yuna stood frozen, tears running down her face. The weight of 10,000 years pressed against her soul. Her ancestors had saved the galaxy, but they had done it through horror, through blood, through silence. Hyun felt sick. His hands shook. He had wanted the truth, but now he wished he had never found it. Taeho watched them with understanding eyes. He had felt the same way when he first learned. The shock, the denial, the slow acceptance that came with time. Now you know, he said softly. We are the silence makers. We were monsters who became gods, and then chose to become nothing. We erased ourselves to escape what we had done. But why are we back? Yuna asked, her voice breaking. Why did we rediscover space travel? Why are we here again? Taeho shook his head. I do not know. Perhaps the universe has a sense of irony. Perhaps some part of us refused to stay forgotten. But the real question is not why we are back. The real question is who we choose to be now. Hyun looked at the dark memory core. Inside that device was proof of humanity's terrible past, proof that could change everything. If this gets out, he said slowly, the galaxy will panic. They will see us as threats. They might even try to destroy us before we remember how to be the silence makers again. Or, Yuna said, wiping her tears, they might finally understand why peace has lasted so long. They might see us as guardians, protectors, the ones who ended the age of war. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. The ambassador was returning, pushing aside the grieving woman. We need to control this information, she said. We need to decide when and how the truth comes out. Because it will come out eventually. Secrets this big never stay buried forever. Taeho nodded. You are wise, young ambassador. Wiser than I was at your age. Take the knowledge, but be careful with it. The truth can heal, but it can also destroy. Everything depends on how it is revealed. They left the hidden chamber with heavy hearts. The path ahead was unclear. Danger waited in every direction, but one thing was certain. Humanity's past was about to collide with its present, and the galaxy would never be the same. The secret did not stay contained. Secrets never do, especially when they are built on foundations of fear. It started with a careless word. A junior counselor from the Velthran delegation mentioned something to his aide. The aide told a friend. The friend told another friend. Within 3 days, whispers spread through the station like fire through dry grass. The silence makers have returned. The humans are the silence makers. The galaxy is in danger. Hyun watched the chaos unfold from his small office. His screens showed news feeds from dozens of worlds. Panic was spreading. Governments were meeting in emergency sessions. Military leaders were demanding action. This is worse than we expected, he said to Yuna, who stood beside him with her arms crossed. Fear multiplies. she replied. One frightened person scares 10. 10 scare 100. By tomorrow, the entire galaxy will be terrified. As if to prove her point, an alert flashed across Hyun's screen. The Kroshan delegation had withdrawn from the station. Their ships were already jumping to faster than light speed, fleeing as fast as their engines could carry them. Other delegations followed. The Morelli left within hours. The Stonefin packed their belongings and disappeared without a word. Species that had mocked humanity just weeks ago now ran from them like prey fleeing a predator. By the end of the first day, half the station was empty. The speaker called an emergency council session. Only a handful of representatives attended. Their platforms floated in a chamber that suddenly felt far too large. Yuna stood on her small platform, now positioned much closer to the center than before. The irony was not lost on her. Fear had given humanity more importance in one day than diplomacy had achieved in weeks. This session will come to order, the speaker announced. His energy flickered with stress and exhaustion. We must address the situation regarding Earth and the historical records that have recently come to light. A Velthran counselor rose to speak. Her crystalline body trembled with barely controlled fear. The humans must be contained, she said. Their history proves they are a threat to all civilized species. We must act before they remember their true nature. We must strike now, while they are still weak. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the remaining delegates. Yuna raised her hand. May I speak? The speaker nodded. The floor recognizes Ambassador Yuna of Earth. Yuna took a deep breath. Every word she spoke now would determine the future of her species. One wrong phrase could trigger a war that humanity might win, but would regret forever. 10,000 years ago, my ancestors did terrible things, she began. They ended a war through methods that should never be repeated. They became the nightmare that haunted this galaxy for millennia. She paused, letting her words sink in. But that was not who they wanted to be. That was who they were forced to become. The galaxy was drowning in blood. Billions were dying. My ancestors saw no other way to stop the killing. IFD, IAB. A Stonefin delegate interrupted. And you think that excuses genocide? That excuses the silence of entire star systems? No. Yuna said firmly. Nothing excuses what they did. That is why they erased themselves. That is why they chose to forget. They could not live with the memory of their actions, so they destroyed those memories completely. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each frightened delegate. My people came back to the stars not as conquerors, but as children. We have no memory of being the silence makers. We have no desire to become them again. We came here seeking friendship, knowledge, and peace. That has not changed. The Velthran counselor was not convinced. Desire means nothing. Nature cannot be changed. If humans were capable of such horror once, they are capable of it again. We cannot take that risk. Then you have already lost, Yuna said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Even the speaker leaned forward with interest. If you attack us, Yuna continued, if you try to destroy humanity out of fear, you will create the very thing you are afraid of. We do not remember being the silence makers, but our instincts remain. If we are threatened, if our existence is at stake, something inside us will awaken, something old and terrible. She let the warning hang in the air. But if you trust us, if you give us the chance to prove that we are not our ancestors, then we can build something better together. We can be partners instead of enemies. We can protect the peace instead of enforcing it through terror. The Velthran delegate opened her mouth to respond, but the speaker raised his hand. Enough. This matter will not be decided by debate alone. We must observe. We must wait. We must see what kind of species humanity truly is. He turned to Yuna. Earth's provisional membership is suspended until further notice. You and your delegation will remain on the station, but you will have no voting rights and no access to restricted areas. This is not punishment. This is precaution. Yuna nodded. It was not ideal, but it was better than war. We accept these terms. The session ended. The delegates fled to their quarters, eager to put distance between themselves and the humans. Yuna stood alone on her platform, watching them go. Hyun joined her a few minutes later. His face was pale and tired. "That was well done," he said. "You bought us time." "Time is all I could buy," Yuna replied. "The fear will not disappear overnight. It might never disappear completely. We will have to prove ourselves through actions, not words." She looked out through the crystal walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth waited. Billions of humans who had no idea what their ancestors had done. No idea what they were capable of becoming. "We need to tell them," Hyun said, reading her thoughts. "Our people deserve to know the truth." "Yes," Yuna agreed. "But we must be careful how we tell them. Fear spreads both ways. If humans learn they were once monsters, some might embrace that darkness, others might fall into despair. We need to frame this story correctly." She turned to face him directly. "We were not monsters, Hyun. We were saviors who used monstrous methods. There is a difference. We ended a war that had killed billions. We brought peace that has lasted for 10,000 years. Yes, the cost was terrible, but the alternative was endless death." Hyun considered her words. She was right, in a way. History was never simple. Heroes and villains were often the same people, seen from different angles. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Yuna smiled sadly. "We wait. We watch. We show the galaxy that humanity can be trusted. And we pray that they give us enough time to prove it." Outside, ships continued to flee the station. Fear rippled through the galaxy like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The name of the Silence Makers echoed in every corner of civilized space, but on one small platform, two humans stood firm. They did not run. They did not hide. They faced the fear with calm determination, because that was also part of being human. The ability to stand when others fell. The strength to hope when all seemed lost. The galaxy had remembered its nightmare. Now it would have to decide whether to trust the dreamers who came after. 6 months passed. The galaxy remained quiet, but it was the quiet of held breath rather than peace. Every species watched humanity. Every government prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Yuna spent those months working harder than she had ever worked before. She met with every delegate who would see her. She answered every question with patience and honesty. She showed the galaxy what humanity looked like when it was not afraid. Hyun continued his research. He dug deeper into the archives, finding more fragments of humanity's lost history. Some of what he found was terrible, but some of it gave him hope. The Silence Makers had not been mindless killers. They had established rules. They had given warnings. They had only destroyed those who refused to stop fighting. In their own brutal way, they had been fair. And after the war ended, they had helped rebuild. Human engineers had repaired damaged worlds. Human doctors had healed the wounded. Human teachers had educated orphaned children. The Silence Makers had been destroyers, but they had also been creators. This information spread slowly through the galaxy. Not everyone believed it. Not everyone cared. But some species began to see humanity in a different light. The Morelli were the first to return. Their delegate approached Yuna with nervous steps and trembling hands. "We have reconsidered," she said. "Fear is a poor foundation for decisions. We would like to resume diplomatic relations with Earth." Yuna accepted graciously. She did not mention the Morelli's previous flight. She did not hold grudges. That was not who she wanted humanity to be. Other species followed. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to heal. The fear did not vanish, but it changed. It became respect. It became caution. It became the kind of careful awareness that neighbors have when living beside a powerful friend. The council called a new session. This time, the chamber was full. Every species had sent representatives. Every platform was occupied. Yuna stood in the center, no longer on the smallest platform at the edge. The speaker had moved her position during the night. A symbolic gesture, but one that carried great weight. This session will address the status of Earth's membership, the speaker announced. Ambassador Yuna has requested the opportunity to speak before the vote. Yuna bowed her head in thanks. Then she faced the assembly with calm confidence. 6 months ago, you learned the truth about humanity. You learned that we were once the silence makers, the terror that ended the Great War. Many of you were afraid. Some of you are still afraid. I understand. She paused to let her words settle. But I ask you to consider what you have seen since then. Has humanity threatened anyone? Has any human ship fired on another species? Has any human voice called for war? Silence answered her questions. We came to this council seeking peace. That has not changed. We came seeking friendship. That has not changed. We are not our ancestors. We do not remember being the silence makers, and we do not wish to become them again. She took a deep breath. But I will not lie to you. The capacity for darkness lives inside every human. We are capable of terrible things when pushed to our limits. That is part of our nature, and we cannot change it. Worried murmurs rippled through the chamber. However, Yuna continued, that same nature gives us other abilities. The ability to love deeply. The ability to protect fiercely. The ability to rebuild what is broken and heal what is wounded. We are not just destroyers. We are also creators. She looked directly at the speaker. 10,000 years ago, humanity chose to end the Great War because the killing had to stop. We used terrible methods because gentle methods had failed. When it was over, we erased ourselves out of shame. We started over as a new species, clean and innocent. But innocence does not last forever. Now we know who we were. Now we face a choice. Do we embrace the darkness of our past? Or do we learn from it and become something better? She spread her arms wide, including the entire assembly in her gesture. We choose to be better. We choose to use our strength for protection instead of destruction. We choose to be guardians of the peace that our ancestors created through blood and fire. Her voice grew stronger, filling the chamber like a song. Earth asks the Galactic Council for full membership. Not as conquerors, not as threats, but as partners, as friends, as the species that will stand beside you when trouble comes. Not because we want to rule, but because we want to help. She lowered her arms and bowed her head. That is our promise. That is our oath. Whatever we were in the past, this is who we choose to be now. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the speaker rose from his position. Ambassador Yuna speaks with courage and honesty, he said. These are rare qualities in any species. Earth has shown through its actions that it seeks peace, not war. The question before us is simple. Do we judge humanity by its past, or by its present? He activated the voting system. Lights began to appear throughout the chamber. Green for yes, red for no, blue for undecided. Yuna watched the colors swirl. Her heart pounded in her chest. Everything depended on this moment. Everything her team had worked for came down to these few seconds. The lights slowed, the colors settled. The speaker raised his hand. The vote is complete. Earth is granted full membership in the Galactic Council by a margin of 73%. Relief washed over Yuna like a wave. She gripped the railing of her platform to keep from falling. Behind her, Hyun let out a breath he had been holding for months. The speaker was not finished. Furthermore, the Council creates a new position. Guardian Species. This position is granted to Earth in recognition of its unique history and capabilities. Guardian species have special responsibilities for maintaining peace and responding to threats against Council members. Yuna looked up in surprise. This was unexpected. This was more than she had hoped for. Do you accept this responsibility? The speaker asked. Yuna straightened her shoulders. She thought of her ancestors, who had carried such a heavy burden that they chose to forget rather than live with the memory. She thought of the future generations who would inherit whatever she decided today. Earth accepts, she said. We will guard the peace. We will protect the innocent. We will stand against any threat that rises against the Council. She smiled softly. But we will do it with mercy when possible. We will offer warnings and chances to change. We will be the silence makers, only when no other choice remains. That is our promise. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had fled in terror 6 months ago now celebrated. Fear had transformed into something else. Something that felt almost like hope. Teho watched from a hidden corner of the chamber. The old archivist smiled as tears ran down his weathered face. He had kept the truth alive for 30 years, waiting for someone strong enough to carry it. He had found that person in Yuna. He had found that strength in humanity. The galaxy had learned Earth's true name. And instead of destroying itself with fear, it had chosen trust. It had chosen partnership. It had chosen to believe that even the darkest past could lead to a brighter future. Outside the station, stars burned in the endless void. Somewhere among them, Earth waited. Billions of humans who would soon learn who they really were. They would be frightened at first. They would doubt themselves. But in time, they would understand. They were the silence makers, reborn as guardians. They were the terror transformed into protectors. They were human. And that meant anything was possible.